You're lying on the ground in total darkness. No walls, no locked door, no streetlight, and somewhere close by something can smell you. That was a normal Tuesday night for most of human history. We spend a lot of time today worrying about deadlines, bills, and whether someone left us on read. Ancient humans had a completely different worry list, and honestly, it makes our problems look tiny. So let's talk about what actually kept our ancestors up at night, and why some of those fears never really left us, they just changed shape. We're talking about the long stretch of human life before cities, before writing, before farming even, going back through the Stone Age and into early Homo sapiens groups living in small bands of maybe 20 to 50 people, moving with the seasons, sleeping in caves, rock shelters, or simple shelters made of branches and hide. No walls that could actually stop anything. No agreed rulebook for the night beyond someone staying awake to watch the fire. Fear number one, and probably the most obvious one, was being eaten. This wasn't a dramatic exaggeration for effect. Early humans lived alongside predators that were bigger, faster, and far better equipped for killing than we were. Cave bears, cave lions, hyenas, leopards, and in earlier periods, saber-toothed cats all shared the same landscape as early hominins. Bones recovered from ancient sites show tooth marks that line up with these animals, and some fossil hominin remains show clear signs of predator attacks. Humans weren't at the top of the food chain for most of our species' history. We were mid-table at best, and everyone at that table knew it. That fear shaped basic behavior. Fire wasn't just for warmth or cooking, it was a wall. Predators avoid flame, and a burning log at the mouth of a cave turned an open, exposed sleeping spot into something survivable. Groups that controlled fire well had a real survival edge, and archaeologists have found evidence of controlled fire use going back at least 1,000,000 years, with much more consistent, everyday use appearing later, around 400,000 years ago. Losing the fire, or running out of fuel before dawn, was not a minor inconvenience. It could be the difference between waking up and not waking up. Darkness itself becomes its own fear once you think about it that way. Not darkness as some abstract, spooky idea, but darkness as reduced vision against animals that could see and smell better than humans in low light. Every rustle in the brush had weight to it. Every strange sound could be nothing, or could be the last sound you ever heard. It's not hard to see why so many later human cultures built myths around monsters that come out at night. That fear didn't need religion to exist first. The fear came from real, physical risk, and the stories came after, as a way to explain and pass on the danger to children who hadn't learned it firsthand yet. Even the choice of where to sleep carried this same logic. Early humans didn't just pick any cave. They picked caves with narrow entrances, good sightlines, and easy access to fuel for fire, because the shape of a shelter could mean the difference between spotting a threat early or being surprised by one. Some well-studied sites show layers of ash and burned bone built up over generations, evidence that groups returned to the same defensible spots again and again, passing down knowledge of which places felt safe and which didn't. That kind of decision-making wasn't casual. It was survival planning, shaped almost entirely by fear of what might walk in after dark. Then there's a fear that gets less attention in movies but was constant and grinding: starvation. Food wasn't sitting in a fridge. It had to be tracked, hunted, dug up, or gathered, and it could disappear for reasons entirely outside anyone's control. A bad drought, a harsh winter, a migration pattern that shifted, and suddenly a group that was fine last season was in real trouble this one. Skeletal remains from Paleolithic and Mesolithic sites show growth interruptions in bones and teeth, known as enamel hypoplasia, which researchers use as physical evidence of repeated periods of nutritional stress during childhood. This isn't guesswork. It's written into the bones themselves. Starvation fear wasn't just about an individual going hungry either. It was collective. In a group of 30 or 40 people, a failed hunt affected everyone. There was no separate food supply for each person. Sharing meat and gathered food was standard practice in many documented hunter-gatherer societies, both ancient and more recent ones studied by anthropologists, because a group that shared survived leaner periods better than a group where individuals hoarded. So the fear of hunger was tied directly to the fear of the group falling apart, which brings us to something even scarier than a hungry stomach. Being alone. In the modern world, alone can mean a quiet weekend. Back then, alone could mean dead within days. Humans are not physically built to survive well in isolation the way some animals are. We don't have thick fur, sharp claws, or the speed to outrun most predators. What we had was cooperation. Groups hunted together, defended each other, shared food, and passed down survival knowledge. Someone cast out of the group, whether through conflict, injury that slowed them down, or simple bad luck, lost access to nearly everything that kept them alive. No one to help fight off a predator. No one to help carry water or find food during illness. No one to watch the fire while you slept. This is likely part of why social bonds mattered so intensely in early human groups, and why exclusion or exile shows up as a serious punishment across many ancient and traditional societies studied by anthropologists, not just a minor social slight. Losing your place in the group wasn't like losing a friendship today. It could be closer to a death sentence, and people almost certainly understood that at some level. Illness and injury carried their own particular kind of dread, mostly because ancient humans had no framework for understanding what was actually happening inside a sick body. No germ theory, no idea that invisible organisms caused disease, a wound that got infected, a fever that wouldn't break, a stomach illness that spread through a group. These things must have felt random and impossible to explain, which tends to make fear worse, not better. When you don't understand a threat, you can't plan around it, you can only wait and hope. Archaeological evidence, including healed fractures and signs of past infections found in ancient skeletons, shows that injuries were common and that survival after them wasn't guaranteed. A broken leg that might mean a cast and crutches today could mean an ancient human could no longer keep up with the group during travel, turning a physical injury into a survival crisis. Then there's childbirth, which deserves far more attention in this conversation than it usually gets. For most of human history, and honestly for much of recorded history afterward, childbirth carried serious risk for both mother and child. Anthropological and skeletal evidence suggests maternal and infant mortality rates were high compared to today, shaped by complications with no modern medical response available, no antibiotics, no surgery, none of the interventions we now consider routine. For ancient women, pregnancy wasn't just a life change. It was a genuine physical gamble, repeated multiple times across a lifetime for many. Weather and natural disaster added another layer that people had zero control over and zero scientific explanation for. Floods, storms, droughts, volcanic activity, none of these came with warning systems or forecasts. They simply happened, sometimes catastrophically. This is a strong candidate for where a lot of early supernatural belief systems actually came from. If you can't explain why the sky suddenly turns violent, or why a river floods your camp without warning, assigning that unpredictable power to something bigger than yourself, a spirit, an ancestor, an unseen force, gives you at least a framework to work with. It's worth being honest here that we can't know exactly what early humans believed about these forces, since belief systems from deep prehistory left no written record, and much of what we understand comes from indirect evidence like burial practices and cave art, which historians and archaeologists still debate the meaning of. And then, quietly sitting underneath almost every other fear on this list, there's the fear of other humans. Evidence of interpersonal violence appears in the archaeological record going back tens of thousands of years, including skeletal remains showing injuries consistent with human conflict rather than animal attacks. Competition over territory, resources, or access to hunting grounds could turn deadly between groups. This fear wasn't constant the way predator danger might have been, but it was real, and it adds a layer that's easy to miss when we picture ancient life as just humans against nature. Sometimes it was humans against other humans, and that came with its own particular kind of dread, because unlike a lion, another person could plan. So when you put it all together, what's the actual takeaway here? Ancient humans weren't nervous wrecks paralyzed by fear every second of every day. Fear was functional. It kept people close to the fire, close to the group, alert to sounds in the dark, and careful with food during good seasons so there was something left for the lean ones. Fear, in a strange way, was one of the tools that kept early humans alive long enough to become us. And here's the part that tends to land differently once you sit with it. A lot of these fears never actually disappeared. We don't worry about cave lions anymore, sure. But the fear of being cast out of the group, the fear of not having enough, the fear of the unknown illness, the fear of the dark corner where we can't quite see what's there, those show up in modern life constantly, just wearing different clothes. Social rejection still triggers real physiological stress responses in humans today. Uncertainty about health still spikes anxiety in ways that mirror ancient survival instincts. Our fears got a modern paint job. The wiring underneath is still Stone Age. Next time your stomach drops from an unread text, or a strange sound in an empty house makes your whole body go still for a second, that's not weakness. That's tens of thousands of years of survival instinct, still doing its job, just with nothing left to actually hunt you. And honestly, it still, even now, hasn't gotten the message that the danger walked off a long, long time ago.